Carlos Arturo, March 8th, English 1A, Period 5, Miss Malvolia. The Boy in the Dark Toyhouse, Book Report. The Boy in the Dark Toyhouse, written by Arthur B., is well renowned for its mature themes while still being a categorized children's book. The date of its copyright was November 11th, 2020, and it has over 121 pages. Where the story takes place is a described gothic and grim decrepit manor, where no sun shines on the place at all, and when the night comes, the moon takes on an ominously feverish red glow. Many of the rooms are in disrepair, the curtains all tattered and full of moth holes, the wallpaper peeling from off the bare and blanched plaster wall, and just the usual broken-down circumstances that come with abandoned buildings. The plot basically follows the main character by the name of Emerson Soul, who is the only living child in the dark toy house. The rest of the residents were placed under a decade-long curse where they were transformed into toys that were awake in the dark of night, but would fall back to inanimate sleep once day had supposedly come back around. So very often was this boy solitarily confined to the dark manor with no one around to talk or interact with, other than the toys when they were awake. But then another character named Gail appears, one day, on a dare from her village friends to explore the dark manor. She wholeheartedly agrees, and she's described to be a courageous and even brash ginger-haired girl. When she and Emerson finally meet, she makes it her sole mission to help the boy escape from the dark manor and bring him back to a life he'd never truly known. The protagonist, Emerson Soul, was described to be a sickly and lanky young boy, his bones said to protrude under his skin and to seem fragile enough to break at even a brush of wind. He has platinum blonde, nearly white, hair, his skin seeming to appear as dark porcelain with a prosthetic dark mahogany left hand from a childhood accident, and heterochromatic eyes of a dim dark brown and the other hypnotizing bright blue. He wears Victorian-era clothing fit for a young child of a high-class family, and has a grayish-blue tear painted onto his left cheek underneath his blue eye permanently. He had lost his parents and his arm in a tragic accident when he was just a child, which then got him and his entire manor cursed for what was supposedly an eternity. He was basically raised by the toys that were watching over him, and they taught him that the world was basically a dangerous place and were out to get him, and they made sure to keep him inside the manor at all times, and especially when they would fall back to sleep. He comes across a young village girl as she breaks into a window and scares him very badly. Once he calms down, though, she and him start to develop a harmless friendship. Even though he lacks emotional or social awareness, she's a great help to getting him to open up and trust that she means him no harm. A far cry from what the toys have instilled into him from his birth. The antagonist could be the toys in general, but the role could definitely belong to one toy. Umbra, apart from the other toys, was a dark taxidermied cherished family dog with the white pattern on its forehead that the head butler had taken the form of from the curse. He has control over the whole manor and staff, and since the parents of Emerson were gone, he had assumed the guardianship role to protect his young master's lone child. But he uses extreme means to do so, which would end up shutting Emerson off in terror of the real world for most of his life. And when Gail comes into the picture, he's less than pleased with her presence, and warns Emerson against getting too close to her, and continues to hammer home that he was cursed to remain within the gates of the manor forever. The major conflict is obvious at this point. Umbra and the toys are eager to keep Emerson within the confines of the dark toy house, and away from ever seeing the outside world that his new human friend, Gail, heirs from. And Umbra is a terrifying enemy, his body being a symbol of a general friend and more pronounced due to his inclusion in the family portrait hung up on the wall, but is also in indisputable control of the entire house that Emerson felt no hope of escape from. The minor conflict is, of course, Emerson himself. He had grown up a shut-in and terrified of what was in the outside world, and even when meeting Gail, who was nothing but nice to him and very accepting, he still had that inner turmoil of whether he could allow himself to trust and open up to her or not. or if he could even trust himself around her, as he also felt himself responsible and a curse for causing his parents' tragedy. I know the author's message was an allegory to abuse and manipulation, as well as the effects they'd have on any young, vulnerable, and innocent mind. However, it doesn't always have to be children who are the targeted victims of said abuse, but it's all the more important to protect them from it too. Umbra was the representative of said abuser, feeding Emerson nothing but fear, insecurities, and mistrust of anything outside the comfort bubble formed to seclude the boy from basically any help whatsoever. But Gale was the representation of the aid that Emerson needed to fully come back into the comfort and safety he could realistically have in the outside world. What is unknown is never truly unsafe, and Gale perfectly encompassed that role for Emerson. Overall, even though the book itself is way too mature to be a children's book, it carries good underlying messages of certain relationships to be had in life that can be either good and healthy, or bad and unsafe for the long run. I enjoyed this book very much in the fact that I could relate to Emerson in several different ways. I've had a Gale in my own life that helped me along my own path of self-discovery, and to face challenges head-on with the knowledge that it was all right to be apprehensive and scared of the unknown, and that I would always have a friend by my side to fight against even my most familiar foes. And so, in conclusion, my book report on The Boy in the Dark Toyhouse by Arthur B. entails the breaking away from trauma and malicious enablers to being welcomed and accepted by those initially thought to be dangerous and ill-meaning. This narrative tells a story of a fight for self-acceptance, as well as independence, and is a definite recommendation to read.